So our experts and educators for this evening, we've got Micah Harris of Wax Atlanta. She is an entrepreneur, a blogger, and a CFM board member. Tucker
Sarkeesian. I've only had it for a year. It's tough for me too.
No one knows how to pronounce that last name.
It's terrible.
Okay. She is the communications director of Sweetwater Brewing and is also a CFM board member. And then Bobby Mercado of Word of Mouth Marketing from Atlanta's own 26-2 Marketing. So before we get started, I would also like to say thank you to the Atlanta Community Food Bank for hosting us and the Food Well Alliance for the partnership that makes these classes possible. Tucker is going to kick us off, and then we'll hear from our next two presenters.
Hey, I'm Tucker. I work at Sweetwater Brewing now. I'm communications PR director, and in a previous life, I was communications director at Serenbe Farms. And I pitched not only the community itself, but the farms specifically, and also some of the products coming out of there. So what today I'm going to share with you guys is how to get earned media, how to get covered in the news. And you know, the easy answer there is hire somebody like me, hire a publicist, but you don't necessarily have to do that. And I understand that with a small business, being a farmer, having an artisan product, sometimes that's a little bit more expensive than your budget can allow. All right, again, we're going to talk about earned media today. And in this presentation, y'all all got a printout of it, and I think the PDF has been emailed to you too. Because I'm sort of an idiot and completely forgot that one of my best friends has her last comedy show, stand-up comedy show here in Atlanta before she moves to Manhattan tonight at Sweetwater, where I work. I've got to do this and run out of here. So I included pretty much everything I'm going to say in the text on here so that you guys can go back and reference it if I'm talking way too super fast or if you have any questions. I'll also give you guys my email address. It's just tucker@sweetwaterbrew.com if you have any questions. All right, let's get rolling. So earned media, how does it happen? How do you get a journalist to talk about you and give you free coverage without supporting them by buying an ad? Because those are very church and state. A lot of people don't really understand that relationship. They'll say, well, so-and-so wrote about my product, but they didn't exactly say what I wanted them to say. Well, did you buy an ad for that product? If not, it's earned media, it's editorial coverage. So you only have a little bit of control over it, but I hope that I can give you a few good tips here on how to get the best coverage out of it. All right, so how does it happen and what we're gonna cover today? Auditing yourself to make sure that you're ready to pitch media, or if you need to do a little bit of brand keeping first, what assets you need to go out with before you pitch a journalist, what kind of research do you need to do within the media realm, how to deliver the big pitch, and then the aftermath, what happens when your pitch gets landed. So first, auditing yourself with branding. Is your product ready for prime time? Is your packaging nailed down? Are you still working on your logo? Are you still working on your website? If you are, then maybe hit pause for a little bit and just make sure that everything is buttoned up. It looks the way that you want it to look. It tastes the way that you want it to taste. The farm is producing at the level that you want it to produce. And then messaging. Very simply, if someone came up to you tonight and said, what's your product or what's your farm? What are you selling? What do you do? Can you tell them in a very clear, concise, one paragraph, 1 minute pitch, what it is that you do? If not, work on that. And by working on that, I mean, talk it out with a friend. Talk it out with someone in this group. Hey, what can I do to hone my message and clearly articulate what it is that I'm selling? And then you go back to it. And then do you have the collateral and the digital and social platforms that people are gonna want to see after you pitch them? Do you have a website where they can go and find out your farm hours, find out how to buy your product, just anything that'll give them more information? Again, if not, work on that before you put it out to the world. But let's say that you do have all that stuff. Then it's time to build your assets. First, you want to develop your pitches or your story angles. Put on your journalist hat, pretend like, you're Carmen Sandiego or whatever that girl's name was, and pretend you're a writer. What is it about this product that I'm looking at is newsworthy? If I were a writer, I'm not the person who's developed this product, what am I going to say about it? What makes it compelling for my magazine or my blog or my digital newsletter or whatever? And think about it as objectively as you can. Again, talk to people in a group like this, talk to friends, talk to other people at farmers markets, get their opinions on it. Then make a list of those answers. Make a list of the things that you come up with that make your item or your farm newsworthy. And let's just pretend for the sake of demonstration here that we have a jam company. So first, it's probably really damn delicious jam that rivals anything else on shelves, right? If I don't think it's delicious, then let's go back to stage one, right? The jam uses ingredients only from Georgia farms. We know that people like writing about locally made products, so that's an asset. That's a pitchable asset. My bacon and apple butter flavor is one of its kind. Oh, and by the way, instead of us getting it from Jim Smith's pig farm, we get it from Riverview for sure, right? Of course. So that's one of its kind, and I have an incredible appetizer recipe using my bacon and apple butter jam. Think about the story behind your product. My jam is using my great-grandmother's recipe. And maybe there's a fun fact, like back in the 70s, the Carters served it in the White House or something. The packaging features an illustration by a local Atlanta artist. And then maybe let's pretend that I was a football player back in college, and then I became an attorney, and I hated it, and now I'm just making jam. Those are all pitchable assets. Now, I've made that list of things. Think about what images would go along with that story. Somebody wants to write a magazine article about it. What image can I provide to them so that people see the story as well as read about it? Well, for the product being delicious, really I just need a beautiful photo of the product and packaging. Local ingredients, photo of the farm, the orchard, whatever. The bacon and apple butter flavor, photo of the product again, maybe a photo of the recipe ingredients. Photo of Nana would be awesome, maybe a thank you note from the Carters, anything that helps paint that picture in the story. So wish list done, what next? Hire a photographer, a professional one, and truly trust me on this. A lot of people, I was also, at the beginning of my career, I was a journalist, and I can't tell you how many times people would have this great story, and then they would send me like a scanned image of their product, and I wouldn't be able to run with it, because I'm a reporter, I'm on budget, I'm on deadline, and I've got this cool story, but I have no image to run with it. If someone sends me a great high-res photo and their story is equal to the next guy's story, but all he is sending me is a scrappy scanned image, I'm running with this one all day long. It's worth your investment. Now consider your budget. If you have $1,000, you're golden. Totally golden, solid. If you have $0 but some product to trade, you can work with that too. If you've got money, ask some neighbor businesses with great photos. Maybe you see all these great photos on their Instagram. You see all these great photos on their website, their marketing collateral. Ask them who took their photos for them. Get 3 recommendations in the contact for those photographers. But if you only have trade, here in Atlanta, call up SCAD. Ask to speak to somebody in their photography department and say, hey, is there a senior class that I could give them this experience of building their portfolio in exchange for, I'll give you all the jam in the world that you want, or, maybe you'll just do it because you have a big heart and you want to support this local artist. Now, what to tell and ask them once you get to the 3 photographers that you want to hire. Tell them what you want. And I would say if you get one thing, get a great image of your product on white background, or in the farm's case, get a great, beautiful image of the farm. Also get beauty shots if you can. If it's your product, say jam, like in the kitchen set up, with some cool bakeware behind it, whatever. A recipe shot if you're like pitching something with the recipe, like I mentioned earlier. And then if you are a piece of the story, say for example, you do have that cool kind of, I used to be a football player and then I was an attorney and now I just make jam. A picture of you with the product would be great. Or if your farmers are a big piece of your story at the farm, you've got this, pig farmer who their family has been doing it for years and years and years, that's definitely a piece of the story. And then Ask for a quote for all and get a la carte pricing too, so that if he comes back and he says this is going to be $2,000, but all I have is 700, maybe you can price it down and just get that one photo on the white background, that one really great high-res pitchable photo. Now you've got all this stuff. You got your pitch nailed down, you've got your photos nailed down. What publications are going to care about this? And think realistically about it. Think about what you read, what influences you to buy products. That might be Atlanta Magazine, that might be AJC, might be Tasting Table. Just think about the various things that you read. Make a list of those. Ask your friends, ask customers at your farm or at the farmer's market the same question. What brought you here today? How did you find out about my product? How did you find out about my neighbor's product? Was it Garden and Gun? Was it AJC? And just keep a running tab of those. And then start perusing the magazine aisles. You might find out about a new publication, say Jam and Jellies Monthly, you didn't even know was out there, but now, well, that might be the perfect platform for my pitch. Google Artisan Jam, like in the case of our fictional product, and see what comes up. You might find out about some really good blogs that have a great following that you've never heard of. Then list is done, now what do? Consider your goal. I'm assuming that most of you, it's more sales at the farmer's market and or more sales via your website. It's not necessarily, I want fame and fortune. So we're not out pitching like Vogue and Us Weekly, right? We're gonna pitch something that's more targeted to our sales, which would be more Jam and Jellies Monthly. And then highlight on the publications on your list that would contribute to that goal and might realistically cover your product. All right, so list highlighted, now what? This is key. Depending on the amount of time you have to spend on this, whittle your list down to a manageable number of publications. If you hired a PR firm, they're going to cast a wide net for you. I mean, it's going to be like 50 to 100 publications that they're pitching. But realistically, you want to do something that you can feel good about and you can manage. So whittle it down to your top 3, maybe 5, maybe 10 once you get the hang of it. But start small and then really, really hone in on those. Read all of their issues over the last year. Check their websites, most magazines, even print ones and newspaper. You can go back and search all of their digital issues for the last year. Read any sections that would be pertinent to your product, i.e. anything that's food related. Of course, it's the AJC. You don't have to go in and read like the obits and whatnot. Just focus on the food section. If it's Jam and Jelly Monthly, read the whole issue. The reason why this is important is you don't want to pitch a writer on your amazing new product that they've never heard of, this bacon and apple butter, and they've been writing about bacon and apple butter for the last 3 issues. You just want to seem like you are genuinely engaged and that you're asking them to do something, but you've done your homework on them as well. Identify the section where you'd be a best fit and check the bylines. What is the name of the person that's writing about local products? What's the name of the person who's writing about local farmers markets? And then do a little digging on them. You can typically find their contact information if you go to either the staff or the contact page on their website. Sometimes they even list their email address at the end of their column. Or all else fails, Google their name. All else fails, call the publications office main line and ask if you can have their email address. If you say, look, I'm this local farmer, I have this local product, I just want to send it to them, I really like their column, they're typically going to give up their email address for you. Not so much the phone number, but you don't want that anyway. We'll get to that. Then look at each writer that you identified and considering what they typically write, think about which pitch from your list of pitches that you wrote down would most interest them. I think that makes sense. This isn't a press release. Get it out of your head that you need a press release. You don't need a press release. You need a simple, succinct story delivered via email. It should be conversational, it should be charming and friendly with bullet point facts. So something that the writer opens up, they're immediately captured by the casual nature of this coming from the person who made the product, and then they get the facts that they need just in bullet point, bullet point, bullet point. You don't need this long diatribe, you don't need a press release, I promise you. 1 to 2 paragraphs is plenty. Don't send attachments. That's kind of a weird random industry rule of thumb, but writers don't like it. If you do have an image, you can embed it, like by copying and pasting it into the email. that'll go a long way. Once they decide to write the story, then they'll ask you for the high-res image. That's when you send it to them. And then link back to your website or your Facebook page so that they can get more information on their own if they want it. Here's an example of a pitch that I wrote for our fictional jam company. I always like to start, and I do this in my business now, I like to start with something that speaks to the writer's ego a little bit. So like for this one, I made up Jim at Atlanta Magazine. I said, hey Jim, loved your story on pimento cheese, bought some and served it at Thanksgiving. Everyone loved it. I almost took credit and then showed them the issue, and hopefully that'll be good karma, right? Then I go into a very conversational, casual pitch about what my product is, but I hit all the highlights. I hit the highlight that it was in the White House, that I ditched my career to make this jam, and then go into the bullet points. It's all local ingredients. Here's my flavors. Here's where you can go to find more information about it. Another trick to use with writers, especially if you have a physical product that you can send them, say, I want to send you this product. Do I have your address right? That typically is going to at least get a response from them that says, you got it right. That's an open door for you and starts the conversation. Oh, and then always sign off, of course, by saying who you are and another way that they can get back in touch with you. Although, letting you know, writers typically communicate via email more than anything else, save for when they're actually interviewing you. All right, so let's say that works. You get the pitch to them. What happens now? Wait 10 days and then send a follow-up email. Include all the original info in the email, but then just say something casual like, hey Jim, just following up to see if you got my email. Would love to ship you this new product if you're interested. Again, them thinking about getting this delicious jam on their desk is going to get them to respond to you more than if you just say that. Don't say that. Don't call, just say no to calling. Journalists don't like it when you call. I mean, I'm sure that there is the random journalists out there who would rather you call, but I have not found them. If all else fails, go ahead and ship or deliver it to their office with a handwritten note and include your pitch and contact info. Sometimes that is a last-ditch effort that really will work. You want to try and get that email into them first and just gauge their interest so you're not wasting your time and your money, but that is a last-ditch effort if this writer is really important to you. Then again, wait 10 days and send a follow-up email, and if they don't respond, you've just got to move on and don't feel bad about it. Happens to me all the time, and I'm giving people free beer, right? Then, let's say the publication wants to do a story on you. This is where a little bit of savvy and a little bit of finesse comes into play. The number one thing to remember is that they're giving you free editorial coverage. So, and these are writers, right? So you want to be grateful and humble and all those lovely things, and remembering that they are giving you more than the cost of what an ad would, more than the cost of an ad value for free, but you can't control the message because you're not paying for it. So be friendly, fun, kind, accommodating, try to make the scheduling very easy for them, meet any deadlines that they give you for shipping the product or providing photos. They will likely want product. Give it to them at no charge. Just again, understanding that you're getting this ad value. And most editors, just as a rule of thumb, don't like sharing draft stories for fact checking. But if you are concerned about it, if maybe you have a very complicated product or a complicated message, you can say, hey, would it be helpful for you if I fact check the story before it went to print? I promise you I'll only fact check it. Never interject your own opinions or thoughts. When you're fact checking, that'll piss off a writer. But sometimes they will allow you to fact check. Now, if you want control over what they write, you'll have to buy an ad, but that gets back into the cost element of it. And really, once you get earned media, having that credibility of a writer saying flattering things about you goes so much farther than just an ad. And when you get that story and you have that link, you can put it back on your website, share it on social media, put it on marketing collateral. And Sarah and B, I got a story for them in the New York Times. I mean, this was probably 10 years ago, and they're still using the tagline like Sarah and B is the new utopia in the US or whatever, still using it today. It's it's like the best advertising you could possibly use. All right, that's it.
All right, cool. So I am Micah Harris. I am the owner of a body waxing studio and a nail bar here in Atlanta, Wax and Buff Nail Bar. I also do some blogging, and I was kind of, shocked, but also, excited when they reached out and they're like, hey, you're like an expert in marketing. Like, we want you to come and talk to everybody. And I'm like, okay, maybe I'll take it. So, they asked me to put together a quick little presentation on branding, right? And like how to build a brand and, just kind of what I thought were good keys to marketing. So I sat a little while and just thought of like the 3 things to me that really build a strong brand. So I'll talk about that. But first, a little bit about me. Like, I am a wildly creative spirit. I am an energetic entrepreneur, mother, blogger, mid-century modern devotee, recycler, world traveler, voracious eater, and lover of tequila. So that's my personal brand. So what is a brand, right? And so a lot of people are like, oh, brand, it's my logo, it's my website, it's the colors that I use, it's the font. No, your brand is really, it's everything that you do. Everything. And really, it's just a person's like gut feeling about you. And all your website, your colors, your font, all of that just serve to create a feeling for somebody. So it's really people's emotional response to your product or your service. Why do brands matter? Well, they matter because people have a lot of choices, right? Like, I'm not the only person that's doing waxing or nails. You aren't the only farm that's producing vegetables. You don't have the only yoga studio in town, right? So you want to build an emotional connection with people so that they trust you, and when they trust you, they buy from you, right? Because really that's what it's about, right? Just creating sales. But like I said, like most offerings are similar in quality and features. So how do you distinguish yourself? How do you create that gut reaction with people? And like I said before, like people buy based upon trust. Like all of us, I know you go to the grocery store sometimes and you just grab maybe the same thing, or you gravitate always to a certain stand at the farmer's market, and you don't really know why, but somehow whatever it is that they're doing has facilitated some type of emotional connection with you, and you're just like, oh, well, it's pretty, or it's nice, or I like the way that their radishes are displayed, or whatever it is. It's the way that they're speaking to you. So here's the crazy part, right, is that your brand really isn't up to you. It's not what you say it is, but it's really what how the public feels about you, right? Kind of scary. So what would you consider like a successful brand? Like, what is brand success? So it's really successful when you describe your product or your service in the same way that other people would. Like, that's when you're nailing it, right? Because sometimes we have this idea and we're like, oh, well, we're this and we're that and we're that. And then you start going out and you talk to either customers or clients and they say things totally different. And you're just like, wait a second, maybe. Or sometimes you can learn from that, right? They tell you things that you weren't aware of and you're like, I kind of like that. I'm going to incorporate that into what I'm saying. Sometimes they say things and you're like, not really what I was going for, right? So brand alignment is very important, right? A misaligned brand is very difficult to correct because, again, we're going back to that emotional, like, gut feeling, right? Like, once people have a feeling about you, it's hard to change. It takes a lot of work. So how to create a successful brand. So when I was thinking about it, it's like, well, what's the number one thing? For me, you have to be authentic, right? Like, you have to be who you are. There's nobody else out there like you. There's other people out there doing what you're doing, but there's nobody else out there like you. So be authentic. Don't try and be what you think you should be. Don't try and be, this is how, people sell honey at the farmer's market, or this is how people view it. Just be who you are. And that's, be wild, exactly. So it's gonna come through. So the second thing is be clear, right? Be clear in everything that you do. Be clear about who you are. Be clear about why you're doing what it is that you're doing, be clear in how you execute your brand, and then be consistent, right? Consistency is key. So I'll talk a little bit more about these. So be authentic, right? So your personality, like who are you? Like I think it's fun to kind of create like a character, you know, like who is the wax client? You know, I have a whole write-up about her, who she is, what she does, where she likes to go eat, where she hangs out, what type of music she listens to. Another thing that's going to come through in your authenticity or your values, like what do you stand for? You know, how do you conduct business? You know, and that's going to come again from your personality and your authenticity. So your mission, like the why. Why are you doing this, right? Like why are we out here doing what it is that we're doing? And then the promise, and that's kind of your commitment to customers. You know, is your commitment that you're always going to be, you know, you might want to say, I'm going to be the most affordable, right? That might be your thing. And you're going to promise that you're always going to have the most affordable pork products at any farmer's market, right? It's whatever commitment you make to your clients, you know, that's on you, but you just have to create a promise around it. So be clear, right? So once you've done all that, you kind of have your values, you have your mission, you have everything there. Now you have to make sure that you're communicating it clearly, right? So your goal as a business owner is just to quickly and efficiently tell the world what you do, right? Like what's the one thing that you do better than everybody else? Have you been in situations, God knows I have, where, you know, you're trying to explain what you're doing to somebody and you're just like, well, yeah, you know, we're working on this project and we're going to expand, you know, our reach around this because and you're just going on, and the whole time you're talking, you're like, what the fuck am I talking about? Sorry, I don't know if I'm supposed to do that on camera, but yeah, you know, and you can see the people's eyes like getting cloudier and cloudier, and you're just like, I'm ruining it, you know? So just get, you know, very clear about what it is and what you do. So here's a couple things. So there's a great book called Essentialism. I don't know if any of you guys have read that, but it's kind of, I mean, it's really a business book, but it's really like, I don't even know if I think it's like classified as a business book, but it's really like a personal self-help book. And it talks about like narrowing everything down to the most essential elements so that you can live the life that you want to lead. So here's a couple mission statements, right? And this is just an excerpt from the book. And there's a couple mission statements for company, right? Our mission statement is to create profitable growth through superior customer service, innovation, quality, and commitment. Okay. You know, our mission is to be the leader in every market we serve to the benefit of our customers and our shareholders. Like, take any of these companies off the side and these mission statements, you have no idea what they do. You don't know what they're talking about. I'm bored. Like, I can't even read the third one because I'm already so bored. So, you know, how to be a little more clear about it. So I went online and I tried to pull a couple mission statements from companies that I thought had a little more clarity. Oh, I can barely read this one. Glasses. So like Patagonia's mission statement is to build the best product, cause no unnecessary harm, use business to inspire and implement solutions to the environmental crisis. Pretty straightforward. It's pretty clear. You know, Warby Parker, you know, they're founded with a rebellious spirit and a lofty objective to offer designer eyewear at a revolutionary price while leading the way for socially conscious business. Yeah, you know, so it's clear. It's not this, you know, nebulous kind of, I'm going to save the world and, you know, make shareholders happy, blah, 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 blah. In my personal opinion, I think some of these are still slightly a little too mouthy for me, but, you know, we're getting there. Right? If you guys really want to kind of dig into it, I suggest that you get Essentialism. It's really good. And they talk about moving from like a mission statement to a strategic, what's the word that they use? A strategic intent, right? Like what's your strategic intent, and just being very clear. Like one of the examples that was used in the book, you know, and going back to these other mission statements, when Brad Pitt went down to New Orleans, and they were trying to rebuild housing. He didn't come and say, I'm going to create communities through, you know, blah, 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 blah. He's like, I'm going to build 150 new houses. Okay, done. Easy. You know what I mean? Like, you know when you're done, it's very easy to recognize, right? So be clear about what it is that you're doing. Be consistent. So when you have a strong brand and it's consistent, like every image, every piece of content, and every experience reinforces your unique value. So I was thinking about all the stuff that Tucker was talking about earlier, right? And she was talking about photography. And she's so correct in that. Like, it's like if you can have 5 killer pictures that you just keep using over and over and over again, that's way better than having 26, crappy iPhone shots that you're trying to use with a whole bunch of background noise. You just want it to be very consistent and very clear. But then, with consistency, we're going back now to the first thing, like, who are you? What are you doing? Is everything that you're doing consistent with who you said that you are? Like, how many times have you gone to, I know this happens to me a lot, I'm hypersensitive to things like this, but like, I'll go into a restaurant, right? And the restaurant's there and, the service is good and whatever, and then the music, I'm just like, why are they playing this? And I can't concentrate on the food. I can't concentrate on the food because the music is just off, like it doesn't match. Or, I'll go into a great, restaurant and, everything's going really well, but the servers are all over on the side, like talking really loud and they're laughing and they're you know what I mean? It's like everything just kind of needs to be consistent and it needs to flow together. And especially like now in our age, right? Like, we're building most of our brand through visual platforms, through social media, right? Through Instagram, Facebook. Now we have Periscope and Snapchat and all of these things. Like, is all of your brand attributes or all of your assets consistent across all of the platforms? Like, that's, I think, like, key. Because, so for example, right, consistent. So these are some of our graphics that we use at Wax. You can see the fonts are all the same, color palettes, the same. We always have gray, white, and blue. So if you saw this and you went to our website and said, oh yeah, here it is, Wax, blah, 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 but then you came in and it looked like this, you'd be like, no, something's wrong, right? So you want to make sure that you're consistent because this looks horrible. Right, yeah, hey, sugar. So you want to make sure that it's consistent. But of course, when you come into Wax, it looks like this, and this is some of our Instagram, also making sure, backgrounds are white, kind of keeping color palettes the same, things like that. So that's kind of my quick and, down and dirty 3 things I think that you really need to look at when building your brands. I think that's it. Thank you. So if you guys have any questions or if you just want to follow me, that's my, my Instagram handle. So follow me, like tag me in some of your stuff. I'd love to like take a look at it and just, you can ask me any questions. I am like super honest and, we'll kind of give you my thoughts on things.
So my name is Bobby Mercado. I oversee a WOM division for 262 Marketing, which is a traditional digital marketing agency. And so I guess I'll start with a question because I'm also going to walk around because I'm not good at standing still. But I say, like, what do you all think word of mouth is? You mentioned it earlier when you were talking to Micah. Like, what do you guys think word of mouth is?
Personal referrals.
Okay.
Yeah, it's referred credibility.
Okay.
And I think it can be 2 things. It can be completely organic where, someone that is your customer is just talking about your product.
Right.
Because it just comes up. Or it can be someone who's your customer actually actively recommending your product when someone solicits, needing a recommendation.
So, all right, typically people get these questions wrong, and I'm usually able to go that way. I think you guys actually really hit the nail on the head, right? It's a conversation. It's a referral. It's what you want. People say, oh, well, we've got word of mouth. We've got great Facebook. We've got followers. We've got Instagram. Word of mouth is not digital. It cannot be done digitally. Word of mouth marketing cannot be done digitally. It can help digital marketing. It can be guided by digital marketing. What word of mouth is personal conversations.
Yep.
It's people looking at another person and literally having a conversation with them, okay? That is very hard to make happen. As you mentioned, it happens organically, which is great. But if we all sat around and waited for everything to happen organically, we wouldn't get very far, right? So what my division does and what my company does is we try to help brands that have a story to share figure out what that story is, who they should be sharing it with, and how they should be sharing it. Now, I really liked Micah's presentation coming before mine because there's a lot of things she talked about there that we talk when we talk about a brand story, right? First of all, you don't get to decide what your brand story is. You get some ideas, right? You have ideas, but there's never been a client that I've sat down with where the story they told me was the one we were going to use as a company. Because as a company, I'm responsible for getting results. If Micah tells me her story is one thing, and I know that's not going to really fly, I'm not just going to run with it. Well, I might if I need the business, but if I want to do well, I'm not just going to run with it because it has to be what is interesting, what is relevant, and what is authentic about your brand. It cannot be one of those three things. What is interesting about my brand, what is relevant about it to the community that I'm talking to, so there can be different levels of relevancy, right? Micah is not only selling to one group of people, she's selling to multiple groups of different people. Each one of those thinks a part of her story is more relevant to them. Some people like the clean lines and the feel of Studioplex as a brand as opposed to Hey Sugar, right? Some people are expecting Hey Sugar, but they like the quietness that they don't get talked to while they're having their waxing done. So everyone's got a different, relevant to different groups. And the key is identifying what's your story, what's interesting, relevant, and authentic about you, who am I sharing it with, and then what we tell our clients and what we do, we are hyper-focused on one very specific story, one very specific, for that story, those group of people, and we cannot go away from it. If we're committing to it, we've got to go in, right? Now, the reason this works, we feel, is what people forget is you're consumers too. You're selling something, but you're consumers too. What you're asking consumers to do is adopt a new behavior, okay? Now, we're all, right? So has anyone here bought a car? Of course, right? Everyone's supposed to raise their hand. Okay. So who here went to the dealership without having any idea of what they wanted to buy or what they wanted to spend or what it should cost? Who went in blindly and said, "Hello, Mr. Volkswagen, could you tell me about your vehicles, why it's good, how much it costs, and what I should pay?" The answer is no. You found out what you wanted, what you were going to do, right? Third-party information from third-party sources that you trusted, that you believed, right? So I'm skipping ahead one little bit, right? 25% of consumers believe that brands tell the truth in advertising. You're not all liars, but people really kind of think you are, right? So my wife, sitting in the front row there, she owns Solstice Yoga Studio, all right? She will tell you how wonderful Solstice is. And it really is wonderful, I swear. She's not just because she's my wife. But she'll tell you, but the problem is she has something to gain from it. And every one of you has something to gain from telling me about why should I eat Bee Wild honey, right? Why should I forget what everyone else, no, your milk. I know that because what was company was again? Pecan Milk. Okay, Pecan Milk. Because who is it? Treehouse Milk. I know Kate from Treehouse Milk, and we work with her actually on a program right now. But so the point being, you can't really tell someone your story. Your story needs to be shared by individuals, right? And you don't have to make those people share. You have to make your story available to the right people at the right time in the right space, right? So your job as a brand, right? What's my story? My story's this. Who do I want to share it with? All right. That's honestly the easy part, right? Because you can do that with some brainstorming, some thinking. Usually you want to get people from the outside so you're not all just talking to each other about stuff. But then where can I go that my story is going to be picked up by these individuals, right? What are the traits of the individual that wants my milk? What are the traits of the individual that would like this? Not who's going to do it, but what are the traits of these people, right? So typically, if someone's shopping at a farmer's market, right, they're going to be a little bit more environmentally friendly than most. They're going to be looking for green solutions. They're going to be looking for places that don't have waste, for places that you can get educated. I know we talked about CFM. A huge part of CFM is education, right? They're educating you, they're educating consumers, they're educating communities about what good food is, where good food comes from, how to eat right. If you want to eat right, this is what you can do. How do you locally source things, right? So that's why we believe people come to CFM, because they want to learn about stuff. Same reason people are going to take your brand, right? They want to be a part of something. There is very little way for you to engage a consumer anymore, right? At least I know for me, I have DVR, so I don't watch television commercials. I do still read the newspaper, but I certainly don't read the ads, right? I pretty much read all my magazines online. I have ad block. Why wouldn't I? There is really no way to engage me unless I allow you in. So what's the reason that I'm going to let you in so that I start engaging with you as a brand? I really have to want it, and I really have to like it. So the idea is that if adoption comes from understanding, right, conversations are how we understand things. We do not understand something because we are aware of it, which is what traditional advertising is. And by the way, I love traditional advertising. I love TV. I think there's really smart ways of doing it, but I think there's smart ways of doing it and the wrong way of doing it. So we ask ourselves, we want people to adopt something. How do they understand something? How do you all understand something? That's a question. I wasn't trying to be rhetorical. Like, how do you understand something? Experience it, yeah. But what do? You ask someone about it, right? You have a conversation. What does Apple make you do if you want to learn something, if you're having trouble with their computer? Right. And or if you call on the phone, right, you want to talk to someone, what do? You got to pay. Because they know if you really want to learn about this, you have to have a conversation about it. Conversations are far more valuable than anything else we can. The problem is they're just really hard to make happen, right? It's very easy to run a magazine ad because I just make a pretty picture, right. I put it in a magazine, and I let it go. Right. And it can end there if I'm not doing other things. So what we want to do when we talk about word of mouth, especially with this group, is we want to help you, want to make sure you're identifying your story and then figuring out efficient, right? I didn't say cheap or easy. I said efficient ways that we can get your story out in a community, share it with the people that are actually going to care about it, right? Because we've got to be efficient because it's hard to start conversations. So you made a great point about not doing an event where there's brands that aren't necessarily aligned with you, right? So if I go to, let me think of a Candler Park Fest, good example, right? Candler Park Fest, I live in Candler Park, so I'll pick it. So Candler Park Fest is a great festival, right? A lot of different types of people there, though, right? There's a little bit of everything. So if I were to pay for a booth at Candler Park, I'm paying to talk to everyone at Candler Park Fest. Chances are less than 20% of the people there are actually interested in what I'm having to do. So I'm paying for 80% of nothing, right? So why do I need to be at Candler Park Fest? I don't. Can I create events like that by myself? Can I work with members of my community and host pop-up events just at their stores where we're only talking to people that care because they're coming from me? I tell my wife this all the time about her brand and Solstice, right, when she was starting out and doing things. If you have real conversations with 2 or 3 people, if only 2 or 3 people show up to an event, that's not a failure. You've got to talk to those 2 or 3 people. They had conversations with you. They asked questions. They took it. So it's not about numbers. It's about content. It's about the people we're talking to. It's about the places we're at. And that's what I want to work with when we start talking about brainstorming. So adoption comes from understanding, right? Talk to your consumers. They're smart. They'll listen. Why word of mouth? All right? And this is, it is what it is. A lot of people think word of mouth is a little kitschy, a little out there still. It's really not. We've been utilizing this for a long time. We just didn't name it. We've just kind of slipped in and named what we do. There's other people that do the same thing. They call it influencer marketing, all types of different things. But it's all about conversation, right? So $6 trillion in consumer spending. We're just like TV. It's just like radio. It should be very important. It should be high on your priority list, right? One offline WOM conversation drives sales more than 5 times of a paid TV ad. So where we get that is 15% of the conversations you have are going to lead to a buying decision. Less than 3% of television ads or awareness actually leads people to anything. The reason that's important, right? You talk to those 3 people, all 3 people, those are now buying. They're all going to share that story with 10 friends, right? Then those 10 friends that they share, if it's an interesting, relevant, and authentic story, they're then going to share it. And guess what? When Kristen shares with Cindy, who shares with Marcia, who sends with Brad, they're all trusting each other, right? Because people trust other people like themselves. And I'm not talking about, Hispanic people trusting other Hispanic people. I'm talking about moms trusting moms. We're talking about people from Virginia Highlands trusting other people from Virginia Highlands and not trusting the people from Candler Park because they're bad, right? There's a divide, right? But it's guess what? If I meet someone from Alpharetta and they tell me about a great restaurant, I'm not sure. I'm not sure I'm eating there. I got to be honest with you. If I meet someone from Morningside at a soccer game and they tell me about this great experience, well, that's kind of one of my neighborhoods, right? Candler Park, Virginia Highlands, Morningside, close enough. They tell me I'm going to trust them because I believe like myself. Parents at school, right? I'm going to trust another parent at my kid's school. I don't even know why, because we all go to the same school, I guess. Really, there's nothing about us, but for some reason you do. We want to tap into that, right? Also, 90% of consumers feel that word-of-mouth recommendation is a leading influencer in their purchase. Any of you, I guarantee you, especially if it's under $100, if you were just told by your friend, go try this, you'll do it. You won't do it if the brand tells you to try it because you're like, you're a brand and you're gross and you're trying to get me to do something because you want my money, right? But if your friend, what does your friend have to gain from it? Well, if it's DirecTV, they're going to get $10 off because we've all seen those commercials. So we know it's not real, so we don't listen to it, right? But if someone tells you, try this yoga studio, try this nail salon, try this honey, why wouldn't I? Why wouldn't you? My friend's telling me to do it. Unless I'm allergic to honey. If my friend tells me, Bobby, I see you're eating honey, you have it in the house, you should get Be Wild, it's fantastic. Okay, I'll do it. It's done. It literally is that easy to get someone to adopt a new behavior when their friend tells them, right? It's how do we get the friends, right? We already talked about this, 25% of consumers believe, right? So 75% don't. That's right? 92% of all people believe friends over any other form of advertising, right? So why aren't we in there? What are we doing with all these other things? All these other things help, right? 68% trust others like themselves, right? And again, we're not talking socioeconomic group, we're not talking about races, we're talking about neighbors, really. Is anyone here familiar with Nextdoor? Mm-hmm. See what people share on Nextdoor?
Too much.
Thank you. I have watched the same conversation go on for months of someone looking for a gastroenterologist.
Me too. That's why I got off of Nextdoor.
Yeah, I can't get off of it. I'm addicted to it. It's my entertainment. I'm not a social media guy. Nextdoor is what I do, right? But the amount that people share, it's because they're neighbors. They just go do it. Someone was asking for a notary the other day, right? And I was like, the amount of time it would take you to write, does anyone know what do I do for a notary on a Sunday? Why wouldn't you just type in notary into Google and UPS will pop up, right? But because we want to have conversations, we want to connect with our communities, we want that. Yeah. So as a brand, let's give them that. Let's give them that connection. Let's give them that ability to treat us, bring us into their lives, right? Bring our brand into their lives, right? 19% of everything that's sold in America, 19% is solely on word of mouth, right? And I'm sure you get this a lot in your business. Probably most people are coming in because my friend told me. Yeah. Right? And that's it. How do we harness it? And then how do we push it further out? Right? This is part of a sales deck that I take a lot when I go talk to big companies. And they all agree, right? They all know that this is the best way. And they all agree that about less than 10% of them actually know what they're doing with word of mouth. So they don't do it, right? They do digital, which is great. They do traditional, billboards, television, which work. Because here's what we want to do, right? We want people to have conversations about our product. And then everything else that we do should be talkable, right? So everything we do, whether it's our print campaigns, whether it's what events we're going to, whether it's what tchotchkes we're giving away. I am not against tchotchkes, but I'm against shitty tchotchkes, right? You said fuck, so I can say shit. Right? So I have been using, I received as a gift at a golf tournament I played in, a Yeti. I'd never known of what a Yeti was, right, before. I use it every day. I literally don't drink. My wife can attest to this. I don't know the last time I cleaned it, but I literally drink out of it constantly, right? That's a good tchotchke, right? A magnet, that's a piece of shit, right? Magnets get lost. So I'll leave you with one little case study, not a case study, but an example of something that we did for a brand. that really fits into what we're doing. And then I'm excited like about brainstorming because I think what we do fits well with what Michael talked about, and I think we can have some really cool conversations. So we right now we have a client here in Atlanta that's a natural gas company, right? Is there anything more boring than natural gas, right? G&G, SCANA, and Gas South. These are the big three. They spend over $20 million a year, each one of them, in advertising. Okay, that's how they sponsor the Falcons, the Braves, the Hawks. What that gets them, I don't know, but they do it and they love it. And you and the rest of us, we're all paying for it because we buy our gas from them. We don't even know we have choices. So we're working with a company called Constellation. Now, Constellation's hardly mom and pop, right? They're a $34 billion company around the country, but they're new to the gas game, right? And so they said, Bobby, we have 10% the budget of the big guys, right? We're going to give you 10% of our budget. So if you do quick math, you realize how little money we're working with, all right? And they said, what we want you to do is get 2,000 more people to sign up for our gas over the course of a year. We were like, okay, that's all right, we can figure this out. So what do you do? So as we started talking to them, we realized every single city they're in Baltimore, they're in Chicago, they're in Kansas City, and a few other major cities similar to Atlanta, right? Every city they're in, they have a lot of community-based efforts. And I don't mean like Georgia Power community-based efforts where like they put their name on like a local community garden, right? I mean to where these people are in the field, hoeing, raking, shoveling with these folks, planting in gardens, doing these types of things, really taking care of them. So we're like, okay, so you guys are really you're really a community-based company. Everyone says they are, right? Everyone loves being a part of the community, but they really are. Okay. So now we know their story. It's loose because they're natural gas. It's not terribly interesting, but the story is that they build a Constellation community in every city they're in. Okay, so now we've got a community. All right, so who's going to care about this, right? Well, they got to be, the census tells us they need to be 32 and older because that's when people buy houses, and you don't really pay for natural gas unless you own a home. Typically, if you're in an apartment, your apartment takes care of it, HOA. So we don't need apartment dwellers. We want to talk to really married couples, probably, young couples. They don't necessarily have to be married, but young couples that live together, buying a home or renting a home or they're paying their bills. Okay, so 32 to 54. All right, that's a pretty easy target. All right, but what are these people are going to care about, right? Well, anyone that's going to care about the Constellation story is going to be someone who cares about being green or environmentally friendly, right? Someone who takes part in their community, someone who probably lives an active lifestyle, right? They're going to be a healthy individual because if you wouldn't really care about if they were planting a community garden if you were eating McDonald's every day. And not that, we make a lot of generalizations, but then we live right. So now we're talking about, right? So I want to talk about, all right, so we're talking 32, 54-year-old people, right? They own a home, they live in the city, they live an active lifestyle, they're green savvy, which was the term we kind of ended up coming up with these people. They care, they engage, and they're learners, right? They want to be taught, so they go to places where education's a theme. I tell you the story because this is how we came to CFM, right? One of our ideas was we need to go, because we're locally based, right? We need to go to all the brands that want to be at farmers markets but that can't afford to be. And we need to pay for them to, instead of having a booth with a person selling natural gas, which sounds like a terrible idea, right? We need to go find local brands and businesses. So we went out and we partnered with Bogey's Beef Jerky, Old Fourth Distillery, Spotted Trotter. Who else do we have? Hotlanta Hot Sauce, right? Some of you may know some of these brands, some of you may not. And we went to CFM and we said, we've got this whole line of all these people that want to come in. We're going to pay for their booth time, and they're going to get to sell their product here, and they're just going to share our story while they're there. Well, CFM was like, no, thank you, right? Because there's a bunch of other people that are paying, so we can't have a bunch of people come in for free. We're like, okay, that's good. That makes a lot of sense. So we've backtracked that idea. So now we go to like all these festivals around town. We buy booth space for these local brands because now we are, as Constellation, the champion of the local brand, right? Georgia Power might sponsor local brands. We're literally paying for their way so that they can actually provide. They can sell their product, right? They then create a relationship with us. They then share their story. We become the local brand champion of a community, and everyone starts talking about us, right? CFM turned out to be our local brand that we worked with, right? If at your farmers markets, you might see Lindley at some of these farmers markets around here. She's our gas girl, right? She wears her shirt. She buys products from you guys. She makes one item each day. She helps with the cookbooks because coming up to her and talking about natural gas would not be interesting. But coming up and looking at a cookbook and eating a recipe that's part of it, and because she's got a shirt on that says "Ask me about my gas," which I love. Like right? People go, "What's this about? Why are you here? What are you doing here?" "Oh, I'm here because natural gas." Then there's a cutoff, right? Not everyone's going to care. If they don't care, she lets them go. That's how we train her. They're not interested. But we're giving them an opportunity to engage, an opportunity to find a natural gas provider who actually cares and works within their community and helps local businesses. If they care about those things, which our bet is that they do, right, that our community does care about that, then it'll be a home run. We will go to athletic rec leagues, right? Young adult males typically, right, who haven't given up the dream of playing professional sports or that there's something special, right? Active lifestyle, they're in shape, they're a little older, they own a home. We need to be there sharing our story with them because those are the people that's going to care. Lindley, our gas girl, it's at all of our community farmers markets. She also goes all around the city. Every time there's a cleanup at a park, every time there's a cleanup at a community garden, we contact the community garden ahead of time. We say, "What do you need?" They say, "I need," they usually give us a list of like $500 worth of stuff. And we say, "Okay, well, we're not going to bring all of it, but we'll bring these things," and we just go and we show up. And Lindley just wears her shirt. And if no one asks her why she's there, she doesn't tell them because they don't care. But if they do ask her, right? Remember we talked about they got to engage with you. You can't engage with them. They don't realize, these consumers don't even realize what they're doing, right? They're like, "Why are you here?" "Oh, I work for a natural gas company." "Oh, well, why are you here at an event like this?" "Oh, well, I'm here because Constellation wants to help provide at these events. So we go out and we work side by side with you guys. And, if you want to know more information, let me know." They always ask for more information. They always want to know. Now, the difficulty is, right, small groups, right? Lindley is literally, that's our girl, right? She's literally going around town, 5 events a week. She's talking to 10, 12, 15 people at each event. But these are 3-4 minute conversations. These are conversations that large brands would literally pay $50 to have. Literally what we're doing is, what's the word I'm looking for? When they do hire you and they come in and they talk, focus groups. We're literally having focus group level conversations with individual. We're not interrupting or intercepting them because we're just blending into their natural life, right? We're not at the mall grabbing you and like spraying you with stuff or like try Dead Sea Scroll, right? No, we're not doing that. We're just, hey, our story is available to you. If you want to learn about it, ask us about it and we'll share it with you. That's all. And that's all you guys need to be doing, right? And I loved some of Tucker's stuff about getting in the media, different things. Then it's how do we capitalize on the media, right? Right, a story for media is probably going to be a little bit different than a story for conversation. So, right, we need to know that difference, right? That we don't just come up with one story and it works all over the place, right? Want to be interesting, relevant, and authentic. Want to have as many conversations with as many possibly interested parties, right? So if you're selling grass-fed meat, you're not going to a vegan convention and talking to them. Even though you can have a ton of conversations, they're not going to eat your stuff. That's where we talk about like hyper-focus, hyper-targeted group, small groups, conversations, just like your friends. Because that's exactly what we want brands to be. That's what we all want brands to be. We kind of want them to be our friends, whether it's our yoga studio, whether it's where we get our nails done or especially where we get our waxing. We want them to be very friendly. I'm sure that can hurt, right? But that's what we want. And those brands want to engage with us like that. And that's kind of what we're trying to do. So only takeaway, right? Adoption comes from understanding. Understanding comes from conversations. What our brand story is. It's 3 things. It's interesting, relevant, and authentic. Hold yourself to a high standard on that, right? It's not just, it tastes good. Tastes good and grandma made it. Well, that's good enough for print. That's great for an article. That's not going to hold a conversation, right? That is going to make a really good article. It's just not enough for a conversation. So it's that next level. Who am I talking to? And make sure that we don't get caught up with how many people we're talking to, right? Because a lot of brands, my wife, she would come to me and talk about events that she could pay to be a part of. And I'd be like, how many people are going to be there? Oh, it's awesome. There's going to be 5,000 people there. All right, well, what's the event? It's blues and barbecue or whatever. Oh, your yoga studio. Yeah, there's going to be crossover. Don't get me wrong. Just because you're into yoga does not mean you're into barbecue. But chances are there's a lot of people there who aren't into yoga. and therefore we're paying X amount of dollars to talk to those people, right? So we want to be efficient with our funds, we want to be hyper-focused on who we're talking to, we want to really hold ourselves accountable on what our story is and why it's actually interesting, and make sure it's not just interesting to ourselves. I'm excited to talk some more and a little brainstorming, not up here. Oh, a question from the lovely lady in the red boots.
What were the constellation results?
I feel like I didn't actually ask her to ask me that. I swear, I really didn't. No, so we've been doing it for 3 months. And what the key is, why it's really helped is they continued with mailers, which suck, right? Who does anything that comes in the mail to them? I mean, I don't even look at mail. It goes directly in recycling bin for the most part. But their acquisition on mailing, we're up 400% on how many people are actually taking the mailer. And it's not because the mailer's any better.
I was just going to say, on another neighborhood Facebook group I'm in, the mailer was discussed because it had a price that was similar to another, so there was a whole discussion about the mailer.
Okay, yeah, and what'll happen is, the idea is we want to remind people of the conversation they had. So when you're doing traditional marketing, like a mailer, like an ad in a space, or wherever it is, right? Are the people that we talk to going to be reading the same thing? Because, oh, all right, great. So I went to the community garden, the gas girl was there, right? It didn't really get into my psyche what happened there. So I leave. Then I see Constellation at the farmer's market, right? Because it's in the same neighborhood. Oh, yeah, that's right. I remember that. Now I get the mailer, and I'm like, oh, yeah, I saw her there. Okay, I should probably do this. Because let's be honest, natural gas, it's all the same, by the way. They're all the same. G&G is not free. Gas South is not any cheaper. They're all like 36 cents a therm. And if anyone realizes how many therms you use, you don't use any therms. Your entire gas bill is made up with AGL, and I learned all this in last year, right? It's all made up in the pipes, in the companies keeping the pass-through and passing that cost on to you. All your bills are the same. I pay the same now that I paid for G&G that I pay for Constellation. It's low-hanging fruit for Constellation, because like, but we're the one that's in your community. And so it's very easy to get people to switch over. But the idea is we want to remind them of the conversation they had. So they have the conversation with a friend or wherever, leaves their psyche, but then they see the mailer. Then they see a digital ad, and they're like, oh, yeah, that's what that girl was talking about. You know, I'm going to click on it, right? And so for our digital results, we're up on clicks, which are the actual term, right? The amount of people that click on their banners has doubled since we started in our program. Then the amount of people that actually give their zip code, which I guess is a big deal, like getting that far, because people accidentally click on stuff all the time. So, no, because conversion is actually when they purchase. So then if they actually give in their zip code, right, we're up 650% in the first 3 months on that, because they're now targeting their digital and their mailers only in the neighborhoods that we're running our events in. And since we're all working together, it's working great. And if we all were doing different things, it wouldn't work great, right? And there hasn't really been a client that we've worked with, or I've worked with in my past life. I used to work at a larger agency that I didn't get to run the division or anything. Same thing, right? When companies were able to continue other types of advertising as well, we worked even better. Word of mouth can stand on its own, but it works a lot better if you have a word of mouth marketing program going and you're getting that earned media.